Note to my neighbors, yes, it's way too early to hang your Halloween decorations. Socialism. It's so hot right now. I exaggerate. Only sort of. Two of the biggest names and most recognizable faces in Democratic politics aren't Democrats at all. New York's Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Vermont's Bernie Sanders are both Democratic socialists. And yet, one is seen as among the frontrunners for the 2020 Democratic presidential nomination, and the other is seen as the fresh-faced future of a party before she's even been elected to Congress. I'm quoting Ocasio-Cortez here. "I'm not trying to impose an ideology on all several hundred members of Congress." She said that shortly after she upset Joe Crowley in New York City in June. But I do think that, once again, it's not about selling an ism or an ideology or a label or a color. This is about selling our values. Donald Trump, you may remember him as the President of the United States, is already leaning hard into the idea that Democrats are embracing socialism by touting the likes of Ocasio-Cortez and Sanders. Here's our president.
The new platform of the Democrat Party is radical socialism and open borders. And I won't allow the United States of America to become the next Venezuela.
As usual, the political spin sprints way, way, way ahead of the facts. Before we can figure out whether Democrats are really embracing the tenets of socialism or whether Trump is just exaggerating for effect, that'd be something new, we sort of have to define the terms of the debate we're having. Sidebar, getting the facts before reaching hard and fast conclusions is, admittedly, I know, a radical idea. All right, so let's start with the term socialism. Here's how Merriam-Webster's dictionary defines it. Quote, any of various economic and political theories advocating collective or governmental ownership and administration of the means of production and distribution of goods. Whew, simple. Think of socialism as the opposite in virtually every respect of capitalism. Rather than rewarding individuals for their successes, it prioritizes the collective. The good of the me is put aside for the good of the we. The government is in charge of providing service to the people as opposed to the private sector providing those same services. It's easy-ish. Now, despite what Trump and Republicans are working hard to convince you of, socialism and democratic socialism are not exactly the same thing. So here's what makes a democratic socialist according to, well, the Democratic Socialists of America. Quote, democratic socialists believe that both the economy and society should be run democratically to meet public needs, not to make profits for a few. To achieve a more just society, many structures of our government and economy must be radically transformed through greater economic and social democracy so that ordinary Americans can participate in the many decisions that affect our lives. Social democrats are not brief. The difference between the two now. Democratic socialists believe the idea of socialism and democracy have to go hand in hand. Socialists are less wedded to the need for the democracy piece of that equation. Okay, so now we know basically what we're talking about. What people like Sanders and Ocasio-Cortez want is far more government involvement in providing basic services like healthcare. They are also strongly opposed to what they would describe as vulture capitalism, the idea of the rich getting even richer at the expense primarily of the poor. So now we're to it. How does that idea play politically? Let's look at the results. Sanders, advocating single-payer health insurance, free college tuition, and other ideas consistent with the tenets of democratic socialism, went from an asterisk to a legitimate threat to Hillary Clinton in the 2016 presidential primary fight. That's remarkable. And Ocasio-Cortez toppled Joe Crowley, long-serving incumbent. He was a part of the National Democratic leadership, despite being a 28-year-old unknown who had never run for any sort of office prior to this year, which is even more remarkable. Now, obviously, Sanders and Ocasio-Cortez are the success stories. It's why we're talking about them. Other candidates that align themselves with the principles of democratic socialism have run and lost. But polling suggests that the ideas of socialism are very much catching on among Democratic voters. Take this August Gallup poll. It showed that almost 60% of Democrats have a favorable view of socialism, Want to take a guess on how many of those same Democrats had a positive view of capitalism? Try 47%. Now that's the first time ever Gallup has found more Democrats with a more positive image of socialism than capitalism. And that, in and of itself, is a very big deal. But like all major changes, Democrats' increased willingness to embrace the ideas of democratic socialism brings with it real risk. And those risks are very clearly outlined in a brand new poll from the Wall Street Journal and NBC. In that poll, a majority of people, that's 52%, have a negative view of socialism, while just 19% have a positive view of it. Compare that to how people feel about capitalism in that same poll. 52% positive, 18% negative. What those numbers mean is relatively simple. Democrats may be warming to the ideas espoused by socialism, but the general public, well, isn't, which creates a political opportunity for Republicans and a major political challenge for Democrats. Start with Republicans. Republicans can use the rise of the likes of Sanders and Ocasio-Cortez as proof positive that Democrats are falling in love with socialism, which, as we know, isn't popular. For Democrats, they have to find ways to get away from that word socialism. They have to make the debate about what the government can and should do for the least among us, as opposed to a theoretical debate about whether socialism is a better economic system than capitalism. Now, given the successes of Ocasio-Cortez and Sanders, and the rise in approval for socialism among Democrats, this is a political debate that isn't going away anytime soon. And that is the point. We do this every week, so make sure to tune in for new episodes.